And you are podcasting with Gary DeMar. Let's figure things out.
As many of you know, I'm often on Facebook dealing with eschatology matters, Bible prophecy, the end times. We're living in the end times. Jesus is coming soon. This is something that's been going on for many, many years. I became a Christian in 1973. The hot ticket book item was Hal Lindsey's The Late Great Planet Earth, which was published in 1970. And in that book, he made the claim that by 1988, the rapture would take place based upon the idea that Israel became a nation again in 1948. This generation will not pass away until all these things take place. This was in Matthew chapter 24, verse 34. Lindsay said that a generation was 40 years, and 40 years plus 1948 was 1988. This is a common feature of what is called a popular or pop dispensationalism. Now, I often get criticized because I deal so much with pop dispensationalism, and it's like my friend Kim Burgess keeps bringing up something similar. He says, Gary, why are you dealing with dispensationalism? It's a worn-out system. It doesn't have any basis in biblical fact. There are other issues related to eschatology that we need to deal with, and of course, I have done that. We published two books that Kim basically did dealing with the hope of Israel and the nations, and dealing with some of the features of what the redemptive work of Jesus has in fact done. What do we find in the New Testament? There isn't a postponement of things that are going to come on physical Israel. The outworking of God's redemptive work in history began with the ministry, the work, redemptive work of Jesus. And the first believers were, in fact, Jews. In fact, if you look at Matthew chapter 10, verse where Jesus takes his apostles and sends them out, and only go to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And that's what they did. They went through the cities of the house of Israel. And so much so that Jesus would return before they had finished going through the cities of Israel in Matthew chapter 10, verse 23. So it's very specific. The Bible is to the Jew first and then to the nations, because that was the promises that were made to Israel. But dispensationalism has put a postponement on this feature, that God is going to deal with physical Israel, a single generation of physical Israel, sometime in the future, and we don't know when. Now, traditional dispensationalism has always taught that there are no signs that lead up to the rapture of the church. The rapture is supposed to be an any moment occurrence. It can happen at any moment. There are no signs that precede it. But the pop version of dispensationalism, though, has kind of ignored that premise and has said that Israel becoming a nation again is a prophetic sign. Now, if that's the case, then the so-called rapture could not have taken place until Israel became a nation again. It's something that Tim LaHaye and others have called a super sign. And if that super sign is in fact a prelude to the rapture, and that super sign didn't take place until 1948, that means the rapture could not have taken place before 1948. And that's been the traditional view. And I cover this in my book, 10 Popular Prophecy Myths Exposed and Answered. And chapter 2, the myth, the modern state of Israel is a sign the rapture is near. And I quote dispensationalists to make the case. This isn't my view of it. This is their view of it. So the point being here that dispensationalism has in fact evolved over the years. And much of what is today dispensationalism is remnants of an earlier kind of introduction into Bible prophecy in the end times in the Niagara conferences on Bible prophecy that took place in the 19th century. But the whole thing was codified by the Scofield Reference Bible in 1909, which was published by Oxford University Press. And it was the Scofield Reference Bible that really solidified what dispensationalism was. And so all the notes in the Scofield Reference Bible lay out the kind of the system, the dispensational system with its various dispensations, similar to the Titanic, where the below sea level compartments were supposed to be cut off from one another so the ship would not sink. But what had happened when the Titanic hit that iceberg, that the water flowed into the next compartment and sunk the ship. Well, Scofield fixed that by saying that these compartments, these different dispensationalists, were sealed. They were, once they occurred, we moved on to the next dispensation, and when that one occurred, we moved on to the next dispensation, and when from that one occurred, we moved on to the next dispensation. So that was the essence of the dispensational system. And I really don't deal with that very much. To me, that's not where the focus for me is on terms of dispensationalism. So Scofield Reference Bible comes out in 1909, but it was immediately revised, updated in 1917, and then later on it was revised again. And so some of the distinctives of the dispensational system have changed over the years. And so there has been this evolutionary change within the dispensational system. But the problem with that is, at the foundational level, dispensationalism is wrong, not so much because of the dispensations, and that has been dealt with in terms of the debate between dispensationalism and covenantalism, where covenantalism sees a progression of God's revelational content moving from one thematic movement into the next until we see the fulfillment in so much of the person and work of Jesus Christ. So that's where the debate has been for many, I would say, traditional covenantal people. Oswald T. Alice, dealt with that on his book on critique of dispensationalism, called Prophecy and the Church, which is a book of which I think came out. I'm going off from memory right now. I think it came out maybe it came out in 1948. I'm going to have to check real quick. Well, I was off by 3 years. It came out in 1945, and so what you find with Alice is it deals with more of the umbrella approach of the differences between covenantal theology and dispensationalism, where I deal specifically with the inherent problems which makes dispensationalism obsolete, and that is with preterist arguments. Is that what much of covenantalism and which all of dispensationalism does is they ignore the time indicators, so specific in the Bible, and also the audience relevance. And so what in 1948, Marcellus Kick's book on Matthew 24 revolutionized my thinking, because what Kick did is he took seriously the audience relevance and the time indicators in Matthew chapter 24, at least up through verse 35, actually verse 36. And so if one becomes a preterist, even a partial preterist, it completely demolishes dispensationalism. I mean, so much of dispensationalism just falls apart. And so that's why I say progressive dispensationalism is still dispensationalism. The rudiments of dispensationalism are still there. You still have this distinction between Israel and the church, but not as stark as the traditional dispensationalists hold to. But what I was criticized for, because I keep bringing up the claim by dispensationalists that they have a glorious future for Israel again, that Israel is going to be back in the land again, and that God's going to deal with Israel in a single generation. And so here we are, nearly 2,000 years from the time that Jesus made his pronouncements about the destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70, and we're still waiting for God to deal with Israel again. And in my debate with Michael Brown, I said, Dr. Brown, where is this final dealing with Israel going to take place? And I raised the question. I said, because according to your position, and Dr. Brown is not a dispensationalist, that is, I would say he's not a pre-trib dispensationalist, but he holds most of the distinctives of dispensationalism, and that's why progressive dispensationalism is still dispensationalism. I was reminded that John MacArthur is not a pre-trib dispensationalist, but he still holds to all of the basics of dispensational hermeneutics. I deal with this in a response that I did on his book, The Coming of Christ. If you were to read it, you would think he's a dispensationalist, because dispensationalists, even the progressive dispensationalists, have not refused to deal with the specifics regarding the time text. These things must shortly take place. The time is near. Jesus said it was coming quickly. All of these, there are more than 100 time indicators in the New Testament, and they cannot be dismissed. And progressive dispensationalism ignores all of those time indicators. Not all of them, and I'll give at least one example of this. But one of the things I was accused of was to following the more pop dispensational view that what's going to happen to Israel in the future. And this was my question to Dr. Brown. Okay, Dr. Brown, when is this going to be satisfied for Israel? And I said, according to your view, based upon Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 and 9, 2/3 of the Jews living in Israel at the time of this event are going to be killed, are going to be slaughtered. And he didn't have an answer for that. He didn't say, "Oh no, I'm not a pre-tribber at all," so I really don't believe that. And he said, honestly, I will get back to you on it. I've never heard back from him again on that. And because during this 7-year period, even if you're a mid-tribber or a pre-wrath, there is this future Holocaust for Israel. So God waits, as I mentioned, 2,000 years. He's going to deal with Israel again, and then he's going to allow the Antichrist come to make a deal with the Jews, and then there's going to be a Holocaust, and 2/3 of them are going to be killed. And I got chastised by these progressive dispensationalists by saying you're just quoting non-scholarly sources of pop dispensationalists. And I say I do. The reason is because these pop dispensationalists are the majority of the end time group that talks about what's going to happen to Israel in the future. It's tens of millions of them. I don't know how many progressive dispensationalists there are. There may be quite a few of them. I don't know that. I don't know if there are any commentaries written by progressive dispensationalists. I think Daniel Bach, has a 2-volume commentary on Luke, which is pretty good on Luke 21, but it still has all the distinctives of a non-preterist interpretation, and although I'll mention this a little later on. So I quoted a number of these pop dispensationalists out there. For example, Sid Roth, who's host of Messianic Vision, stated that 2/3 of the Jewish people living in Israel will be exterminated during a future Great Tribulation. Jack Van Impe's book, Israel's Final Holocaust, we learned that when the prophecy clock starts ticking again after the rapture, and I'm quoting Van Impe, it will be traumatic days for Israel. Just when peace seems to have come, it will be taken from her, and she will be plunged into another bloody persecution, a devastating explosion of persecution and misery for Israel. And there are others here. Jerry Falwell said that millions of Jews will be slaughtered at this time. This was in 1984 that he said this. But a remnant will escape, and God will supernaturally hide them for himself for the last 3.5 years of the tribulation. Some feel in the rose-red city of Petra. Charles Ryrie. Now, you can't dismiss Charles Ryrie as someone who wasn't a scholar. He was a scholar. I mean, he's wrote commentaries on the Bible. He has his own study Bible, and you might say, well, because he's a dispensational premillennialist, that makes him a non-scholar. Well, you can take that position, but I don't think very many people would. I think Charles Ryrie on eschatology is wrong, but he wasn't wrong on everything, and he purported to follow fundamental hermeneutical systems in order to come to his conclusion. But he wrote in his book, The Best Is Yet to Come, that during this post-rapture period, Israel will undergo the worst bloodbath in Jewish history. John Walvoord, I mean, you can't call John Walvoord someone who's not scholarly. I mean, he's written tons of books on eschatology. And I guess if you say, well, because he holds the older view of dispensationalism, that wasn't really a scholar. Well, again, you can take that position. I don't think most people would. Arnold Fruchtenbaum states that during the Great Tribulation, Israel will suffer tremendous persecution. As a result of this persecution of the Jewish people, 2/3 are going to be killed. Dr. Paige Patterson, who served as president of Southeastern Baptist Theological Seminary from 1992 to 2003, and as president of the Southern Baptist Convention from 1998 to 2000, stated the following in a radio debate I had with him some years ago. And here's what he said: "The present state of Israel is not the final form. The present state of Israel will be lost eventually, and Israel will be run out of the land again, only to return when they accept the Messiah as Savior." And this was stated on a Dallas, Texas radio program in a debate with me in May 15th of 1991. So this is the view. This is the view that has been out there on what happens to Israel in the future. And I brought this up, and then I was accused of only quoting non-scholarly people, that there are progressive dispensationalists who don't hold that particular view. So let me just make this point. If someone can show me has information on progressive dispensationalists and their views on Zechariah 13, verses 8 and 9, please send them to me. I want original source documents. I want footnoted material. Send them to me at Gary DeMar at AmericanVision.org, Gary DeMar at AmericanVision.org. And I will update what I'm presenting here with this information. Now, I did find some material in what I would call scholarly expositions of the Bible in, for example, the Expositor's Bible Commentary, edited by Frank Gabeline, and this is from volume 7 of it, on Zechariah by Kenneth L. Barker. And this is what Barker writes about Zechariah chapter 13. He says, "These verses apparently precede," that's his verses 7, 8, and 9, verses 1 through 6 chronologically. They depict a refining process for Israel, while what happened in AD 70 at the hands of the Romans may have been an initial stage in the progressive fulfillment. And that was a near Holocaust, by the way, friends. The final and complete stage is yet future, for Israel as a whole is not in the proper covenant relationship with God described in verse 9. The fact that a remnant will survive, 1/3, reveals God's mercy in the midst of judgment," close quote. So 2/3 are going to be destroyed, 1/3 is going to survive. And so this is Kenneth Barker on commentary in Zechariah. Then, let's see, what's this other one I have here? Harold Honer, he writes this. And again, this is Harold Honer is a recognized scholar. He had a massive commentary on Ephesians. And here's what he wrote: "The great deliverance of Israel will occur at the second coming of Jesus Christ to earth. It is also a time of judgment of Israel, where there will be the purging of unbelievers." And he cites Zechariah 13, verses 8 through 9. "And the only remaining Israelites are those who have believed. Hence, every Israelite will be saved." So what you have here is that, again, the only remaining Israelites are those who have believed. Hence, every Israelite will be saved. So when Paul states in Romans chapter 11 that all Israel will be saved, what he's really saying is all that's left of Israel during this great tribulation period will be saved. So Harold Honer here is considered a scholar, and he takes the position, not in the starkness of some of these pop dispensationalists, but still makes that case. I mentioned, again, Michael Brown, still waiting for him to give me an answer from his particular perspective. And then I went to two books that I have in my library on progressive dispensationalism. The first one is by Craig Blazing and Darrell Bach's book, Progressive Dispensationalism, an up-to-date handbook of contemporary dispensational thought. This was published in 1993. And I'm making a side here is that progressive dispensationalism in terms of production, of output of material, has been scant. I haven't really seen a whole lot, and I don't really hear much about progressive dispensationalism like we did in the 1990s. But when those books came out, I put them in my library, hoping to see the development of these things. But I haven't really seen that much. But again, I haven't followed the progressive dispensationalism very much. And one of the reasons is it's not very popular in popular end-time belief systems. I mean, that's just the reality. So I go where the numbers are and where people are discussing these things. So I picked up the book. Remember, this is Progressive Dispensationalism, an up-to-date handbook of contemporary dispensational thought. So this is a revision and updating of dispensationalism. I don't have any problem with that. That's a good thing. But it still has all the earmarks of regular dispensationalism that preterism destroys. And so the only thing I could find in the index on Zechariah is Zechariah 14, which is, understandable because Zechariah 14 is a big deal in dispensational circles. But nothing is said about Zechariah 13 verses 8 and 9. Robert Saucy's book, The Case for Progressive Dispensationalism, that also came out in 1993, states the following on page 177. The concept of cleansing and judgment related to both the spirit and fire is also prominent in the Old Testament prophecies, and he references Zechariah 13, verse 9. So when progressive dispensationalism becomes the mainstay and we see popular dispensationalism go the way of the dodo bird, I'm dealing with the most popular view of end times, and that is dispensationalism. Comes out from Thomas Nelson. I mean, you got David Jeremiah, Jack Hibbs. You have all these guys out there pushing this end time deal, and they're selling, millions of copies of books dealing with the end times. Ron Rhodes, who publishes with Harvest House, has continually come out with the same books, same number of pages, same stuff, repetition, dealing with the end times, which is popular dispensationalism. These books sell. These are the ones that are out there. These are the ones I deal with. These are the ones I deal with in great detail. In fact, the Ron Rhodes book, and I'll give Ron Rhodes credit, he attempts to deal with preterism. He does not do a very good job, but I cover his views and his material on the end times in the book that he wrote called A Bible Prophecy Under Siege, which includes stuff I've written, and I have a critique of it in my book, Prophecy Wars. So, for those advocating for progressive dispensationalism, I want to see the commentaries on Zechariah chapter 13, verses 8 and 9. If you have any information, good, bad, or indifferent on those from stated progressive dispensationalists, please send them to me at GaryDemar@AmericanVision.org. If you want more information and me dealing with many of the problems with dispensationalism, of the pop variety of it, you can get my book, Prophecy Wars, The Biblical Battle Over the End Times, 10 Popular Prophecy Myths Exposed and Answered, my book, Last Days Madness, Wars and Rumors of Wars, John Bray's book on Matthew 24 Fulfilled, James Jordan's book on Matthew 23 through 25. Go to AmericanVision.org, put in prophecy, and you'll see all the books that are out there on this particular topic.
Thanks for podcasting with Gary DeMar. Please subscribe and share this with anyone you think really needs to hear it.